Okay, here's an overview of Congress, a little of the history of it, and the differences between the two houses in the legislative branch, also known as Congress. So what we'll be able to do today is describe the different structures of Congress, the different powers that they have, and the functions in each of the houses. So why did they create this bicameral structure? This structure, again, is not like Parliament with the one house. They also had a different structure under the Articles of Confederation. So what we remember from the compromises that they needed to have representation issues handled and things like that. So they wanted to also give power to the states. And most states already had a structure like this, so they were going to use what they knew to create the national government. So again, the bicameral concept came from the Great Compromise, the Connecticut Compromise. And they're fighting for that representation. This is the little states versus the big states. The House of Representatives, sometimes we'll just call it the House, is based off that population, makes New York, a bigger state, happy. And the Senate would be equal representation, 2 representatives. This makes smaller states like New Jersey happy. So in the Senate, sometimes known as the upper house, they're elected originally by state legislatures. They're originally elected by officials at the state level. So people that were already elected, they would pick individuals to represent them in the federal government. This has changed since the 17th Amendment. And the Senate was meant to be a safeguard against majority rule, a place where individuals could work for 6 years at a time, not overreact, take their time on big issues. So they're overlapping terms. A third of them are elected every 2 years. So this is kind of what is known as a continuous body. Okay, so again, it isolates. They try to isolate themselves from all that public pressure and the instability. For the House of Reps, then we have 2-year terms. They're a little more responsive. They're closer to the people, more accountable. That rather than just your state, they're responsible for an area within their state, and they're constantly up for re-election. So different powers. Powers unique to the House of Reps. They can bring up the idea of impeachment, come up with a basis of it, and vote to see whether or not the individual, like the president, should go to an impeachment trial. They also just have a simple majority vote. The individuals wanted the framers that were creating the Constitution to react to public outrage over wrongdoings. This is why this is a check. They have Bill Clinton, Andrew Johnson. There's Samuel Chase, who's the only Supreme Court justice, and now we had Donald Trump. All face impeachment and all found not guilty. Some of the powers that are only used in the House and only allowed to use in the House are the power to tax. They have the tax bills originate in the House because they see that they're closer to the people. So the people have a little bit more say by electing an official that lives in their area and could be closer to the people. And also they say it should come from the legislative body because those are the people that we elect. And the biggest thing about the 2-year election for the House is that if you are trying to get re-election, you're probably not going to continue to pass more and more taxes on the people. Another power that is unique to the House of Reps, if the Electoral College is deadlocked, the House of Representatives will choose the president. So if no one wins the House of Reps or the Electoral College, the House of Reps will then decide the winner. The United States Senate has different powers. So if the impeachment trial goes through, passes the House, they vote on it, then it goes to the Senate, who act as the jury. They deliberate upon the charges. They hear the sides. They have the power to remove this individual from office, not to put them in jail. Okay. The Senate is also a smaller body, 100 individuals compared to 435. And this is kind of known what is the teacup factor. So here's a scenario. It's called The Story of the Senatorial Saucer, based on a supposed breakfast between Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. And this is kind of what happened. There's a tradition that when Jefferson, coming home from France, called Washington to account at the breakfast table for having agreed to a second and, as Jefferson thought, unnecessary legislative chamber. So he's talking about the structure here. And he asked why, asked Washington, did you just now pour that coffee into your saucer before drinking? Okay, so they're talking about agreeing when they're making the Constitution to the second branch. So he asks, Washington does ask Jefferson, why? Why did you just pour that coffee into your saucer before drinking? And Jefferson asked to cool it. My throat is not made of brass. And Washington says, even so, we pour our legislation into the senatorial saucer to cool it. So it's a place where they can kind of have these ideas, concepts, and give it time and not overreact to what's going on in the world. Other powers that are unique, they get to approve all treaties of a 2/3 vote. The House is a little large and too big, they feel, to keep some of these things under wraps and a secret. So the Senate, again, by the requirements, are older as well and hopefully more experienced. And it's a perpetual body, meaning that not everyone is reelected every 2 years. So there's people that have been working on these treaties and things like that that are going to be sticking around because they take a while. Other powers, so if you think about the Treaty of Versailles versus the Panama Canal, so they get to approve these treaties and work on them. Versailles was divided among multiple groups. Republicans were opposed. One block of Democrats kind of supported it. A second block supported but opposed certain amendments to it. And it never really passed. A different resolution was agreed upon to end that. Where the versus Panama was passed right away, just needed a 2/3 vote, and they got that. So again, it could take time. You need individuals who are there for a long time to work on these things. The United States Senate also gets to approve and of the appointments of the president. Each Senate committee will hold hearings about these nominations, investigate them, and then they can approve or disapprove. So a lot of ambassadors and diplomats are done that way. The cabinet members are done that way. Heads all these agencies within the executive branch, federal judges, and all officers in the armed forces. Here's some famous rejections of appointments. Robert Bork, he was claimed by the federal government to impose standards of voting fairness upon states. He was opposed to that, and he supported the rights of southern states to impose a poll tax on individuals. So he was denied. We have John Tower, Secretary of Defense. Supposedly he was a bad alcoholic, womanizer, just a bad personal life. An appointee by Obama for the Secretary of Health didn't pay all his income taxes. So he had to deal with that, and he had connections with a businessman who was a lobbyist who had a bad reputation. And then Clinton tried to appoint Zoe Baird for Attorney General, and this was a person who hired illegal aliens and paid them and did not pay into their Social Security tax. And then one other thing about Congress, a little different here, Senatorial Courtesy. If the senior senator in the same party as the president and represents the state where the candidate is going to serve votes no, most senators will follow suit. So if there's an appointment of an individual from Illinois and a senator says no, this is not a good appointment for that position, a lot of the senators will respect that and agree. Okay, so there's a little courtesy there by working together with your colleagues.